Okay, we are live. Hello, good evening, and welcome back to the Lawrence YouTube channel. Today is a practice session on the topic of assumptions. So we have discussed the theoretical aspect of assumptions already. We have understood the concept, and we have had a couple of practice sessions as well, where we practiced a few questions. Today is a continuation of that particular practice, and most likely this would be the last session of assumptions and their practice. After this, we'll move on to another topic, most likely conclusions, in the next session, which would happen next week. So let's begin. How many of you are here? Piyush is here, Priyashi is here. Chalo, theek hai. All right, let's start. Let me just quickly pull up some questions for you guys. All right. So, very briefly, we'll discuss the concept before we start practicing the questions. When we talk about assumptions, what do we understand? We are talking about assumptions in the context of logical reasoning, specifically for the CLAT exam, but logical reasoning in general. When you talk about logical reasoning, we talk about logical arguments, right? तो क्या होता है एक लॉजिकल आर्ग्यूमेंट? कैसे बनता है एक लॉजिकल आर्ग्यूमेंट? A logical argument usually has two important components. One is a premise. The second is the conclusion. Correct? A premise और conclusion क्या होता है? Premise are basically your facts, basically evidence या फिर कोई डेटा, कोई भी सेंटेंस जो हमें कुछ बताए, जो हमें कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन दे, दैट इज आवर प्रेमिस, है ना, कि चल क्या रहा है, हो क्या रहा है, व्हाट आर वी टॉकिंग अबाउट नाउ. व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट अ प्रेमिस और अ फैक्ट और अ एविडेंस और अ डेटा पॉइंट, इट लीड्स अस टू समथिंग, है ना. अगर मैं कुछ बोलता हूँ सो मैं उससे कुछ एस्टैब्लिश करना चाह रहा हूँ, else I'm just blabbering, right? It won't make a logical argument. If I'm making a logical argument, I'm giving a data point in order to make some logical claim, right? And what is that logical claim? That logical claim is the conclusion. What am I trying to convince you of? What am I trying to prove? To give you an example, let's take up this water bottle. So I say that this is a affordable water bottle because I got it for just 100 rupees. Now, I got it for 100 rupees is a fact. It is a number. It is a data. It's an evidence, correct? And what is that leading me to? That is leading me to establish or make a claim that this is an affordable water bottle, correct? So when I say that I purchased this water bottle for 100 rupees because it was an affordable water bottle, I gave you a fact that it was for 100 rupees, and then I made a conclusion that cost value of it being less than 100 rupees makes it affordable. So your premise was it costs 100 rupees, and your conclusion was therefore it is affordable. Simple as that. Another example which I give you all the time: I study every day for the CLAT exam, therefore I have a better chance of cracking it. Now, you studying every day for the CLAT exam is your premise, information, evidence. What would that lead to? That would lead you to have a better chance of cracking the CLAT exam, which is your conclusion. Now, in both of these cases, there is an assumption. What is an assumption? If it is not a part of a logical argument, it is a part of logical argument, but it is implied. It is hidden. It is, unstated. That is why you assume something, right? It is not explicitly given, you assume it. आप अनुमान लगाते हो, आप सोचते हो कि क्या इसके बीच में एक लिंक होगा. So your assumption is something which forms a link, or you could say a bridge between the premise and the conclusion. Correct? अब कैसे ये लिंक बनता है, कैसे एस्टैब्लिश होगा, कैसे हमें पता चलेगा? वेरी पर्टिनेंट क्वेश्चन टू आस्क. नाउ assumption is something जिसके बिना this premise won't be able to make this particular conclusion. Your premise won't be able to connect to the conclusion. For example, in the example, I study every day for the CLAT exam, therefore I have a better chance of cracking it. The underlying assumption here, which we do not mention but we assume, is people who study every day have a better chance of cracking an exam, correct? So if you take away this assumption that people who study every day do not have a better chance of cracking the CLAT exam, would it make any sense to make that particular premise that I study every day, and then would it lead to the conclusion that it would make your chances better? No. If you negate your assumption, if you negate your assumption, your argument falls apart, your argument loses value, your argument becomes illogical, right? In the bottle example, this is an affordable water bottle because I got it for just 100 rupees. If I say 100 rupees is a huge sum of money, that would just make your argument baseless, right? So we are assuming that 100 rupees is not a lot of money. 100 rupees is something which is affordable. And that is why this bottle being 100 rupees is also affordable. So if you say that 100 rupees is a lot of money, that is, you negate your assumption, your argument becomes baseless, that how is it affordable if 100 rupees is a lot of money. I hope the concept is pretty clear. It's very simple, it's nothing complicated. People make it complicated. It's very very simple. Okay, I'm not saying easy, it's simple. इजी या डिफिकल्ट तो डिपेंड करता है कि आप कितनी प्रैक्टिस करते हो और कैसे समझते हो. ठीक है. I hope the theoretical aspect is clear to everyone. If yes, can I have a very quick yes in the chat box if the theory is clear? People who are watching me live. Okay, I have received the confirmation. So we'll proceed to solving some questions like the previous class. So this is the first question. You have to tell me which option is correct. Okay, K-pop says A, Piyush says A, Priyanshi also says A. Unanimously, everyone has answered A. And that is the correct answer. We are short on time, so we better send these documents via speed post. A is saying sending documents via speed post will take less time than some other means of sending documents. The sum is a very important keyword. B saying documents must always be sent via speed post. No, this is not an assumption which is valid. Sending documents via speed post will take less time than all other means. Now, this is an extreme option, right? Options which have words like always, all, never. These are extreme options which are rarely correct. And you cannot assume that it is faster than all other means of communication. We don't know. Maybe we are also looking at affordability or some other factors. So maybe speed is not just one factor, and we don't know whether it's faster than all other means of communication or not. There might be other possible ways which are not accessible right now. So ये चीज हम लॉजिकली अज्यूम नहीं कर सकते, बट ये लॉजिकली अज्यूम कर सकते हैं कि कुछ तरीकों से तो फास्ट होगा, इसीलिए हम बोल रहे हैं कि अगर टाइम कम है तो स्पीड पोस्ट से भेजो. Which is why this is the correct answer. So well done guys, good job. Next one. पीयूष is saying व्हाट्सएप कर दो. सही बात है. Okay, we have different responses this time. K-pop says D, Piyush says B, Priyanshi also says B. Alright, ठीक है. पहले समझते हैं पैसेज किस बारे में. ठीक है, पैसेज क्या कह रहा है. The world sees tech companies as giants with trillion-dollar market values and global networks. Q renewed regulatory efforts to undermine their dominance. Shortly after, यहाँ पे ये Q नहीं होगा, ये I think EU होगा. But जो भी है. Shortly after the EU agreed stringent legislation to regulate big tech, the UK this week set out details of its plans. Such moves are a response to big tech's competition stifling scale. इसका मतलब क्या होता है? कंपटीशन को खत्म कर देना, कंपटीशन का दम तोड़ देना. इतना बड़ा इनका स्केल हो गया. Amazon will account for estimated 39.5% of US e-commerce. According to research, Meta has 3.6 billion users and is the world's largest social media company. Google has 92% of the search engine market. Now, which makes them very big in terms of their number of registered users and therefore having a dominance in the market. Therefore, small players might suffer. The competition might, not be fair. Let's read the question. Which of the following is the most appropriate assumption required by the passage? Now, remember, assumptions are a bit different from inferences. I think I explained this to you in the previous class as well. Inferences is something which you understand after you process given information based on your observation, based on what is given. So basically, it's a logical deduction which comes later. Assumption is something which is foundational, जिसके basis पे आपका argument टिका हुआ है, ठीक है? Now, A is saying tech companies with small market shares will go bankrupt and not survive in the absence of regulatory intervention. Can we assume this that they will go bankrupt? I think this is a little extreme to say that they would not survive. They might find it difficult to survive, but not survive नहीं कह सकते. So extreme option wrong. Regulatory efforts will help bolster the market shares of the competitors of Amazon, Meta, and Google. तो रेगुलेटरी एफर्ट से जो कॉम्पिटिटर्स हैं उनका मार्केट शेयर बढ़ेगा. इज दिस एन अजम्पशन और इज दिस एन इन्फ्रेंस? यू गाइस टेल मी. इज दिस एन अजम्पशन और इज दिस एन इन्फ्रेंस? इट्स एन इन्फ्लुएंस राइट. क्योंकि देखो, अगर आप इसको नेगेट भी करके देखो कि मार्केट शेयर चलो नहीं बढ़ता, अगर स्टेबल भी रहता है तो भी ठीक है, तो भी क्या दिक्कत है? वुड दैट मेक योर आर्ग्यूमेंट इलॉजिकल इफ आई से द रेगुलेटरी एफर्ट्स विल नॉट हेल्प बोल्स्टर द मार्केट शेयर्स ऑफ कॉम्पिटिटर्स ऑफ Amazon, मेटा एंड गूगल? ठीक है, मार्केट शेयर नहीं बढ़ रहा, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. उससे मेरे आर्ग्यूमेंट पे फर्क कैसे पड़ा? नहीं पड़ा ना. बट अगर मैं बोलूं, डी की बात करूं मैं, tech companies with large market shares require or merit regulatory intervention in order to maintain competitive markets. ये is this a valid assumption? Yes. C कह रहा है regulators have been struggling to rein in big tech. This is again an inference कि इनको दिक्कत आ रही है big tech को रोकने में. और ये भी हम validly infer नहीं कर सकते, ना ही हम इसको assume कर सकते हैं that there has been struggle. We see no signs of struggle anywhere in the passage, right? But D क्या कह रहा है? Tech companies with large market shares like Meta, Google, and all of these need regulatory intervention in order to maintain competitive markets. अगर मैं इसको negate कर दूं, tech companies with large market share do not need regulatory intervention in order to maintain competitive markets. Would my argument that this is stifling the competition and regulatory effort is required to undermine their dominance, would it make any sense? अगर जरूरत ही नहीं है रेगुलेटरी इंटरवेंशन की, नो, योर आर्ग्यूमेंट वुड बिकम इलॉजिकल एंड बेसलेस, है ना. तो नेगेशन रूल ध्यान रखो एंड अजम्पशन एंड इन्फ्रेंस का डिफरेंस याद रखो. यू वुड नेवर गो रॉन्ग इन सच क्वेश्चंस. ठीक है, दो ही तीन फंडे हैं. एक्सट्रीम ऑप्शन हटा दो, इन्फ्रेंस देख लो, इन्फ्रेंस तो नहीं है, एंड नेगेशन रूल ट्राई कर लो. ठीक है. सो डू यू गाइस अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई ऑप्शन डी इज करेक्ट? इज दिस क्वेश्चन अंडरस्टूड? यस और नो? Piyush is saying what is an inference? Okay, so inference is a logical deduction. I explained this in the previous class as well. बेस्ड ऑन ऑब्जर्वेशन। आप इसको एक टाइप ऑफ कंक्लूजन कह सकते हो। This is a type of conclusion. I'm not saying the conclusion, I'm saying type of conclusion because it's not the final conclusion. To give you an example, I give this example quite often. Imagine you are driving a car and you stop at a red light. रेड लाइट पे जब आप रुकते हो, आपको पीछे से कहीं पे एक लाउड बैंगिंग नॉइस की आवाज आती है, थड करके आवाज आती है। अब, what is your first thought? What are you inferring? What is your logical deduction? It could be a bomb blast, could be a tire burst, could be an accident. All of these are inferences. कि कोई चीज हुई, there was some data, there was some observable information. Based on your understanding and based on whatever data you had, you made a certain inference. हिंदी में बोलते हैं अनुमान लगाना। ठीक है, उसके बाद आप गाड़ी से उतरे, आपने पीछे उतर के देखा कि हाँ ठीक है, किसी का टायर बर्स्ट हुआ है, देन दैट बिकम्स द कंक्लूजन, क्योंकि फिर आपने फाइनल बता दिया कंक्लूजन कि ये हुआ है। बट जब तक फाइनल नहीं पता, दोज आर इन्फ्रेंसेस। ठीक है, गॉट इट? इन्फ्रेंस क्या होता है? there can be multiple type of inferences. So this is how inference is different from an assumption. Assumption comes first. assumption के basis पे argument आपका दिया जाता है। ठीक है, Priyanshi is saying, isn't the passage actually saying that the big tech are lost with dominance if there will be regulations? Yes. How are they? नहीं नहीं, मेरिट का मतलब नहीं समझे आप। मेरिट मतलब रिक्वायर है यहाँ पे। Tech companies with large market share need regulatory intervention in order to maintain competitive markets. ठीक है, कहने का मतलब ये है कि जो टेक कंपनी जिनका लार्ज मार्केट शेयर है, उनमें रेगुलेटरी इंटरवेंशन की रिक्वायरमेंट है ताकि मार्केट्स जो है कॉम्पिटिटिव बने रहें। दैट इज व्हाट द सेंटेंस मींस। मेरिट हेयर मींस डिमांड। टेक कंपनीज नहीं मांग रही हैं, मार्केट मांग रही है, कॉम्पिटिटिव मार्केट की नीड है ये। ठीक है, ओके, ऑलराइट, लेट्स मूव टू द नेक्स्ट वन। हाँ पीयूष, आप एक तरीके से कह सकते हो, इट्स अ लॉजिकल गेस। दिस इज अ सिंपल वन। Yes. Priyanshi says B. Piyush also says B. Constitution of India is a vital document, lays out our rights and duties and places meaningful restrictions on representatives. It is important on our part to educate ourselves about the Constitution. Therefore, every person must endeavor to place a copy of the Constitution in their home. So you can identify premise. Therefore के बाद आपका ये रहा conclusion. But what is joining these two? That people are more likely to read a text if it is placed inside their home. तभी तो वो घर में रखने को कह रहा है, क्योंकि एजुकेट करना चाहता है वो, है ना? अगर हम बोल दें कि people are not likely to read a text if it is placed inside their home, why would he even want you to keep a copy to educate yourself, right? So negation rule also works here. बाकी options कह रहे हैं elected representatives cannot be trusted, irrelevant. Constitutional framers were great visionaries. This is an inference, but also irrelevant. None of the above nahi hai. Option B is the correct answer. Well done. Chalo, let's do another question. Okay, Priyanshi says A, K-pop says A, Piyush says C. All right. Rather than adopting conventional ways of water consumption, we should all start storing our water in copper containers so that we can get the benefits of copper intake. It is now well proven that storing water in a container for 24 to 48 hours is very effective in transmitting some copper content into the water. Which of the following is an assumption required by the above passage? It is safe to drink water out of a copper container. Hmm. Okay. I think this is correct. Because if you negate this, that it is not safe to drink water out of a copper container, your whole argument would not make any sense about storing water in copper container अगर सेफ ही नहीं है तो ये तो बेसिक रिक्वायर्ड assumption है कि कॉपर कंटेनर से पानी पीना सेफ है. I think this should be correct. We should drink adequate amount of water every day. Bekar. Storing water in copper containers is one of the best ways to ensure that the requisite copper content reaches your body. How do you assume that it is one of the best ways? And even if you like look at it, this is more of an inference, right? This is more of a observation based on what is given. And even if you say that this is an assumption, let's try the negation test. Storing water in copper containers is not one of the best ways to ensure that requisite copper content reaches your body. ठीक है तो भी क्या दिक्कत है तो भी we can say this particular thing that there are benefits of copper intake and this is effective in transmitting copper into the body. बेस्ट तरीका है कि नहीं वो हमारा आर्ग्यूमेंट ही नहीं है. हमारा आर्ग्यूमेंट है कि ये बहुत अच्छा तरीका है पानी देने का मतलब कॉपर डालने का बॉडी में. So I don't think it's gonna be C. It's gonna be option number A. This is an assumption required by the passage. It has to be safe to drink out of a copper container. Yes, C is more of an inference. And even if you take it as an assumption, it does not pass the negation test. ठीक है जी. So option A is the correct answer. All right, Mr. K-pop. Okay, let's do one more. Okay, K-pop says D, Priyanshi says C, Piyush says B. Okay, we have three different options for this one. Question number 5. Mental health issues and stress or anxiety often go together. Finding an emotional release, like painting, allows a person's mind to relax and let go of all the problems that contribute to a high stress level. When people create something beautiful through painting, they stimulate the creative mind while relieving mental strain. A low stress level leads to happier, healthier lifestyle and help improve overall mental health. ठीक है. Which of the following is an assumption required by the passage? People can have a creative mind. Mm, okay. Let's try to negate this and see if the passage makes sense. If I say people cannot have a creative mind, my argument would not make sense यार. अगर लोग क्रिएटिव माइंड ही नहीं होगा लोगों के पास पीपल कैन नॉट हैव अ क्रिएटिव माइंड इफ वी अज्यूम दैट योर आर्ग्यूमेंट वुड फॉल अपार्ट क्योंकि अगर क्रिएटिव माइंड नहीं होगा तो वो कैसे पेंटिंग करेंगे पेंटिंग ही नहीं कर पाएंगे तो इमोशंस कैसे एक्सप्रेस करेंगे और स्ट्रेस कैसे रिलीज करेंगे so this passed my negation test so this is a valid assumption let's look at option B The act of painting involves expressing emotions. Yes, that is a valid emotion. इसको भी negation डालो. Act of painting does not involve expressing emotion. If it does not involve expressing emotion, how would that lead to a stress release? So also a valid assumption. Stress reduces the quality of life. I negate this. Stress does not reduce the quality of life. Again, passage does not make sense. Also a valid assumption. All three pass the negation test, and all three are valid assumptions, which makes option number D to be the correct one, which means all of the above. प्रियांशी saying I know how the no, अच्छा ठीक है ध्यान से पढ़ना चाहिए क्वेश्चन इजी क्वेश्चन सिंपल क्वेश्चन था आई होप यू ऑल अंडरस्टूड इट ठीक है नेगेशन टेस्ट वुड नेवर फेल यू दैट इज अ फुल प्रूफ 100% वाला मेथड बस ये ध्यान रखना है कि कहीं आप इन्फ्रेंस को तो नहीं उस तरीके से देख रहे हो ठीक है चलो एक और करते हैं लेट्स डू वन लास्ट क्वेश्चन Yashna is saying a cold, energetic evening. Very cold, energetic evening to you too. आज तो वैसे गर्मी थी दोपहर में तो it got pretty hot at least in Delhi. I don't know where you are based out of. Also, Yashna, please try to join the class at 8 p.m. Now we are almost about to wrap up, so maybe you can watch the recording when it goes on YT. Okay, Gwalior, nice. Because of this section being weak, lost 20 marks straight in the mark. कोई बात नहीं अभी तो बहुत लंबी जर्नी है we'll work on it together. K-pop says A, Priyanshi says A. Okay, what about the other two? Piyush. चलो ठीक है. Let's look at the question. Let's read it. AI often elicits a sense of amazement, of wonder, of possibility for the future. But just as AI offers advancements, there is also the potential for a bleak future. Machines are prone to bias and racism. These machines learn by running training data through algorithms, each crafted by human handlers. Therefore, if the data inputted into the system is biased, the result will also be biased. This is dangerous and the threat needs to be addressed before biased AI systems become ubiquitous, matlab present everywhere. Ultimately, AI systems have the potential to deepen existing systemic inequalities, particularly in industries like healthcare, employment, and criminal justice. Which of the following is an assumption required by the argument? Existing datasets can incorporate the biases of human handlers, which reflects in AI output. This is definitely a valid assumption. Large scale deployment of AI systems has been hindered by the likelihood of biased results. No, this is not an assumption required by the argument. Not really. This was more of an inference. Human handlers have tried to manipulate AI systems through the use of biased data. Uh, this does seem to be a valid assumption, but is this a required assumption that they have tried to manipulate AI systems through? Let's try to negate this. Have not tried to manipulate AI systems through the use of biased data. Hmm. हाँ तो ये भी हो सकता है ना कि जो डेटा सेट एआई ने पिक किया हो या जो उसको मिला हो मे बी द ह्यूमन हैंडलर्स डिड नॉट ट्राई टू मैनिपुलेट द एआई सिस्टम यूज्ड अ डेटा सेट which was biased so that could be a possibility and your argument still holds good so does not pass the negation test very convincingly Industries like healthcare, employment, and criminal justice are in urgent need of AI system. This is not valid. So, which makes option A to be the correct one. Existing data sets can incorporate the biases of human handlers, which reflects in AI output. Because if it cannot incorporate the biases of human handlers, there would be no biases at all, and we won't really need to put in all this work, right? Okay, so that brings us to the end of this particular session. Thank you so much for attending and participating. I hope this was productive. We practiced a few questions, looked at the concept of assumption, and now we would move on to the next concept, which would most likely be conclusion. Would let you know in advance. I hope the topic is clear. You guys can now start practicing questions of assumptions on your own. You can use the internet, you can use whatever resources you are currently following, whichever institute you are enrolled in. So, yeah, the assumptions is done from my end. And that's all for today's class. Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead, great night ahead. And I'll see you all tomorrow once again in Hindu analysis session at 3 p.m. Bye bye. Take care. Signing off.